Hey guys, FAL guy here. I'm with me, Mark. He's a manager at Dsarms, and today we're going to do a little Q&A session. We're going to talk about a new product that Dsarms is launching this year, and we're also going to pose a bunch of questions that you submitted to me through Instagram. So I'm going to hand over the word to Mark from Dsarms to introduce him real quick, and let's get this show started.
Hi, everybody. My name's Mark. I'm a manager at DSA. Been here for several years, so well over a decade. I think about 15 years. So I want to just answer you guys' questions as many as I can at this session or other sessions. We haven't really done very much of this in many years. So I'm glad to be here talking with FAL fans and also just people that are interested in maybe thinking about FAL stuff in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. The market right now is like great for FALs. I mean, we're kind of saturated with the ARs. We have the AKs out there, but the FAL, that really cool, the right arm, the free world that carries so much history, so unknown. So I think like we're in a great position to push out the FAL even more into the hands of the people that want just a unique firearm, right?
Yeah, I've seen the same thing with roller locking guns lately too, where there's a lot of interest in things that are not just AR or even AK. There's been a lot of AK in the last few years too, but there's also people just want to they don't really know enough. They want to know more. So these Q&As is these kind of things are going to be important, I think. So.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we're going to start off with the number one question that everybody's asking: what is the status on the magazines? Because we know like
Yeah.
you're making some magazines. I did a review on one of your mags. It did work, but now they're out of stock. And people, even at SHOT Show, they ask like, hey, like what's the next in the magazine? Are they ever going to do 30 rounders? Or, like I got a really cool magazine here with me, the 25 rounders. Are they ever going to do that? Like people just ask these questions. So Mark, what do you got to say about that?
Well, we did ship out about 1,500 magazines recently, and then the major problem we have is when we stop production of the magazines to do a Gen 2, that stamping company decided they were going to leave the stamping industry. So we got our dies back, but those dies, we would think, because they're progressive, we could just find another stamping house and they could put that in a machine and just start running it. But apparently our dies are not really compatible with the vast majority of stamping machines, the actual big presses. So when we did finally find a company that did it, that company, they're still in business, but they got bought out by another company and they weren't sure they wanted to do gun stuff. Now they did, in fact, end up doing the thing that's doing the project, but we're still kind of running dies in a machine that's not super compatible with that type of die, which causes a lot of slower manufacturing and run times that are just too long. And time is money with a stamping manufacturer, so a lot of times they can't get back on the project because it's taking longer than it should to make that, and so therefore we get shelved quite often on it. Now, I will say we were out of production on the magazines because we wanted to be for quite a while. We wanted to do another generation of them. We make some more upgrades and changes, but those changes, some of them got implemented. Some of them we couldn't get implemented because the stamping company was like, we're not going to put this type of time and energy into this product. So we are actually going to most likely make tooling that is most likely soon, I should say. We are going to do it either way. Will be compatible with the vast majority of the type of machines that make a magazine of this size. So that
Okay.
would several manufacturers if we had to and have it manufactured. So that's been the delays. This year, we will still put out small batches of magazines, just like we just recently did. But I do expect it to stay enough to kind of fill a little bit of demand, and then it'd be a little bit of a time period where we don't have another batch, and then it'd be a lot of that throughout the year.
Okay. So like when do you all expect to be in full swing with the magazines? Do you think that's more towards the end of the year or maybe already next year,
I
judging
think,
by all the delays that you're currently facing?
sure, I think it'll be mainly a lot of batches that ends up making people think it's in full swing because we're constantly putting them out there. I think that'll be what the reality will be, not some large dump of magazines. And honestly, we shouldn't even do a large dump of magazines even if we could, because the magazine requires us to do a couple machining operations that back when FN made the magazine or any of the other countries that made the magazines, they would have mandrels, and they would also hand file some of the burrs and some of the edges. And if we were to do a very large amount of magazines, that would open the door up for QC issues. So we also kind of keep it very close, very short leash on this project. So for that reason, for to make sure the magazines are better, and to also make sure we can actually get a manufacturer, because like I said, this die really shouldn't be in the type of press that it's in. So it doesn't make it a bad magazine. It's just for production reasons. That's not really how it should be made. So
Yeah, and I personally think it's cool if you release the small batches, because it gives a lot of FAL owners a chance to buy one. Because if you have one large batch, then you have the hawks just come in and take like all of the mags, and then no one else can get them.
yeah, and it's tough because we have people buying our magazines from us that have other U.S. manufacturers of FALs that were of dubious quality at times, and then kit guns that may have not been assembled correctly. And so some of these magazine things are like, we have to try to always keep in the back of our mind, we don't know what FAL this is going into. It might not go into a DSA or an FN or an MBEL. It could be going into something else. It could be going into a home build. So we have to try to keep that mag QC extra high because of the state of manufacture of all the different types of FALs. And some people put them in inch guns. Metric mags will run it in an inch gun, but a lot of times they won't run two though. So there's a lot of complexities with the magazine of the FAL, which is why we are looking at just getting a die that's going to give us a faster but more consistent and generational changes all at once, because that would make it easier on not just us, but of course the customer and their availability, and then maybe even work on the price, because when we first started making these mags 10 years ago, or actually probably more like 15 years ago, it was a much cheaper mag to make back then than it is now. There's less and less stamping manufacturers in the United States. And having the stuff made overseas is not always the best option either. So there's a lot of complexity to the magazine issue. I know it's the number one concern. I'm glad we tackled this question first. But I just want people to know that we're going to be producing these magazines all throughout the year. And yeah, there was a dry spell because we were not in production for several years because of finding somebody who would even run the dies was taking a while. And then, then a bunch of surplus would come in. So we'd be like, well, there's not a lot of demand for this US mag right now. We'll let them buy the surplus mag because that's what they want. And the pricing on the surplus mags were better. Well, now that surplus mags that don't seem to be around, and people they're demanding, they're demanding that we have these magazines go. So that's why we're working hard to get the production in a better position to do this.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's just crazy that some people think like, oh, making a mag is so easy because Magpul makes all these polymers mags for dirt cheap and super fast or whatever, but they don't understand the process that goes into making a magazine. I mean, think about it. They started in the 50s with the design of the magazine, and back then you had way more manual labor. It's a way more complicated process, just basically making a mold and making sure that a spring, a faller, and the base plate fits on it, right?
Absolutely. And I'm not trying to cope here for the company. I'm telling you, it really is. And we know that because our polymer ones are always in stock. We're always shipping them because that is so much easier to make. The metal one does take a lot more, which is why we developed the polymer magazine, so we would always have something. And I know people, I don't blame them if they want a metal magazine. The gun came with metal magazines. The gun is a time era gun where you want the metal magazines, but we had to do the polymer too because we had to make sure we always had some control of magazine availability. And that's why we did the polymer mags. Polymer mags, will they outlast a steel magazine? We all know that probably not, right? The steel ones are, but the one thing about a polymer magazine, it's either straight and working or it's broken. Where a metal magazine can look like it's fine, but be bent and not working. Where with the polymer ones, there's a few advantages, not just weight and cost, but also that there's um, they're in a solid state, solid working state, or they're not. Meaning they're cracked or they're not, right? And even when they're cracked, a lot of polymer mags, like a Magpul mag, will still work when it's cracked. But again, not trying to cope for the company. People want the metal magazines, and I fully understand why they want them. And we understand that, and that's why we put out this last batch, and we're going to be doing that throughout the year, because people want the mag. That's the mag that they want with the gun. But to talk about, what you were saying with how hard it is to make, that is why we do make the polymer one, so we have a magazine available that actually is something that we can make in large quantities and have available at all times.
Yeah, that's awesome. And are you guys planning on doing any 25 or 30 round magazines? Because that's going to be the other question that people ask me nonstop. Because, I hate to say it, 30 rounders just look cool in FALs. Are they practical? No. Like, even my uncle carried a 30 round magazine in Rhodesia. Like he said, the maintenance on the 30 rounders was super high. Like, after every contact, they had to clear it, take the spring out, clean the inside, stretch the spring because the spring would wear out. But it was a magazine of last resort that they carried, or it was the first magazine they used in a contact. So either it was the last one they had on them or the first one. So in case it didn't work, they had the 20 rounders to fall back to. And then obviously, as I said before, I think the 25 rounder is a really cool concept that you all did a couple of years ago. I love mine. I found it for dirt cheap on Gunbroker, and I have a lot of people asking me nonstop about it.
Yeah, the 30 round magazine is nice because 20 is good capacity, but in a combat role, the 30 is great because you can maybe help you break contact easier, by putting up more, making your force look like a much larger force because you have those 10 extra rounds. Maybe a few guys have those. It still does make sense. I know they're less practical because you can't get in the prone position as well. The gun weighs more, but at the same time, the FAL is so balanced that all that weight is right in the middle. So while it's more weight on your gun, it doesn't affect the balance, which is nice, especially on an FAL because it's already a very naturally balanced gun. We are going to make 30 round magazines, but there is no way we're going to stop the 20 round production to make the 30s. We need to get caught up on those first. The 25 round magazines that was my idea in 2009 or 10 or something like that. And the reason why I wanted to do the 25 rounders is at the time, Armalite, the Armalite company that made the AR-10 here in Illinois, they were doing 25 round magazines. The 6.8 SPC, which was a AR-15 with a different barrel and bolt head and different magazine. Those were normally 25 round. There was a idea that 25 round would be a good idea for 308 because it's right in between the two. Not overly long, but still a couple extra rounds. But with the 25 round FAL magazine, we have another issue that we noticed, and that is if somebody doesn't do a proper insertion of the magazine, the bolt hole open protrusion that it actuates the back of the follower to make it hold open the last shot, that can actually knock around loose because on the 25 it's feeding from the opposite sides of what on a 30 or a 20 rounder. Now, could that be designed around? You could probably change the follower and change that stack up so it's loaded, so that the first round of a fully loaded 25 round magazine is on that side of as it would be on a 20 or a 30. But that's new tooling change. So it's like, do we put that type of energy and money and time into that niche of a product? Maybe someday, but that's after the 30s. So it's not really something that is on the top of our mind right now on the 25 rounder. But the 30, absolutely, we're going to make that. We know people want those. That's not even we leaving money on the table if we didn't make that. But we have to get caught up in the 20s. So the people that are buying our rifles or buying a rifle they find at a gun store or an original rifle and they don't have magazines, they have to have that standard magazine available in steel. And that's so the 20 rounder is number one priority right now, closely followed by 30, but the 30 rounder is after the 20 rounder.
Hell yeah. Is the 30 rounder going to be straight or curved?
It will be straight. That is the FAL mag is hard enough to make size print a curvature. It actually would be all different tooling. So now you're talking about another couple $100,000 for the tooling just to make that one 30 rounder. The South African 30 was metric 30 was a straight magazine. The inch and the Canadian one, they made two different springs in them. Some were just Bren mags. But some of them were actually a not a flat spring, but a coil spring like a regular magazine. Canadians did that because it improved the reliability. The curved ones mainly were meant for Bren guns, which meant they were fed upside down and they had gravity to help assist them feeding into a Bren gun. But it's the opposite for an FAL where it's trying to push the rounds up. So a lot of times they didn't have enough spring pressure. But when South Africans did their straight 30 round magazine, they used a regular FAL type of spring. So therefore it had spring pressure. But like you had mentioned, because that's so much heavy, so many rounds, it weighs so much more. There was a maintenance level I'm sure they had to take. We never really experienced that here, but probably had to do with that we're using modern music wire spring, and that didn't have as much of the problems as a spring from the 60s or 70s would have.
Cool. No, I agree with you. I think it's super cool that you're doing the 20 rounders and that you're thinking about the 30 rounders. I think it was a huge benefit to the FAL market. And yeah, the spring issue that is really funny because the 130 rounder that I got, the curved one, is a Canadian one. So they actually have a decent spring in it. And
Yeah.
I remember seeing the Bren ones with a weird spring. It's like stack or looks like an accordion, and that thing just could not work for half the time. Looked cool though, you know.
Yeah, the curved ones look really neat. It's also what has been seen in movies and video games. So that's also helped that look. And honestly, for the first 10 years I was here, or at least the first 5 years I was here, the number one gun that we put on all of our, is almost like our logo, was an OSW with a curved magazine. So we put an image out there that people expected with a 30 round magazine. So I understand why people want that magazine, but maybe we make that FAL so successful and it becomes such a mainstream gun that we can go ahead and do a whole new set of tooling to do a curved 30 round magazine. But wow, that's a large investment for that one magazine.
No, I get that. I get that. But anyhow, good talking about the mag. And now comes the number two question that I'll get asked nonstop. And that is the Quadrail, full length Quadrail. I mean, I got it on my para, the super cool battle ready para, the full length Quadrail. I think it's a nice like handguard. It is heavy. I agree with you on that. But just Quadrail is just a vibe to it, you know? And yeah, a lot of people have been asking me. So what are your plans on doing that or not?
So the Quadrail, I understand why people want that because this gun is boxed in between a 70s, 80s vibe, but also a 2000s vibe. So the Quadrail seems to be at home on an FAL for a lot of people because the M-LOK, it's like, well, they think of other more modern options for guns with M-LOK. But there is a weight concern. It is quite a bit heavier. But the main reason why we stopped doing the Quadrail was we were getting nothing but requests from M-LOK. And so we weren't even having requests for Quadrail anymore. And that's why we stopped doing it. The Quadrail also requires our design, which I think is the best design. We worked with our different manufacturers on at that particular time. This was a long time ago we did the Quadrail. It requires cutting off your handguard ring, which means you can't put the plastic ones back on as easily. You got to get a two-piece ring, which aesthetically does not look the best for people sometimes. So with the M-LOK, it's drop-in. Why did we do that? Because AIM Sports Chinese manufactured rail, that was a drop-in. The Veltor was a drop-in as well. So we want to do 100% drop-in, not have to cut a part of your gun off. And our Quadrail was not going to be compatible with that. Now, could we have modified our Quadrail to take a regular handguard ring? Yes and no. The bottom of our Quadrail is a 7075 T6 heavy duty aluminum. It's not 6061. It was literally created to be able to support constant pounding from an M203 grenade launcher on the bottom. So it's not a light grade aluminum, and because of that, it's a forging. So that forging is the size it comes out of the forging die. And I don't think we would have enough area to redesign it to take a handguard cap. We'd have to do a new forging. So again, like the magazine thing, talking about buying a bunch of tooling, again, in the top part of the Quadrail is not the problem because that's an extrusion, and we actually still use that extrusion. It's the bottom part of the Quadrail that has been why we have not been able to just easily put that right back in production. We would have that same issue we had before where people would call and say, I can't get this on my gun. Well, did you cut your handguard ring off? Cut my handguard ring off. I'm not going to cut part off my gun. So that was a problem that a lot of people did not want to. It was a hurdle for them mentally to cut a part of their gun off. So that's why we went to the M-LOK. Could we design an M-LOK quadrail? Yeah, probably, and maybe we'll look at that. But we just still don't get at that many requests for the quadrail anymore. But I know there's demand out there, so it's something we would never just remove it and take it off the table. But it's possible that someday we'll do it again. We have plenty of another reason why we haven't done it is we have plenty of the short handguards in stock, the short rail handguards that the OSW uses, and that's because of contract overrun for the Mexico contract. We supplied, some people know this, some people don't, but they'll know it now. We did, 5,000-6,000 OSWs alone to Mexico, and they almost all had quad rails. So, we were running those nonstop, and we still have quad rails left over for the short gas system FAL, the OSW type FALs. So because we've had those in stock, there's also been less reason to run quad rail because we have 50% of the product line in stock anyway, and it's just the long ones we're out of. So that's why that has not been taken up. That product hasn't been brought back in or taken up again.
Okay. Yeah, I understand your concern or your motivation behind the current way of not focusing on the quadrail. I mean, I agree with you on that. I'd rather you all make a lot of magazines for the rifle and at least have that squared away before you all look at a quadrail. I mean, it's a niche market at the end of the day. But people still ask me, so that's why I ask you the question on that.
Nothing wrong with asking that, and I respect the customers a lot that even talk about this stuff, like the quad rail or like non-bipod cut handguards or magazines, 30-round magazines, because the gun is niche. So actually, the products are a niche within a niche, so it makes sense why they'd be interested in it. Because the gun is not an American design like an AR-15 or an M1 Garand. So I call it a niche only in regards to the millions of ARs that are made. It's actually not a niche gun; it's a very popular gun. But in the United States, it's never going to happen. It's never went to the level of the AR, of course, or let alone the M1 Garand or something like that, because it was largely adopted by European countries and African countries, South American countries, basically everywhere but the United States. And so the people who are into that gun, into the FAL, they do look at these products that seem like, from a manufacturing aspect, do not make sense, like the quad rail compared to the M-LOK and stuff like that. They look at those products. It's natural that they look at them, and I really don't blow off their ideas at all, because they have this gun, and this gun is they have it because they chose this over an AR-10. They chose this over many different guns that might have been more centric to the American guns, like ARs. So I don't blame them at all for asking for these things that seem very niche or very small market. There's a vibe with the FAL and all the different variations and all the different types of accessories. And we don't ignore that. And it would be disrespectful to the customer. They bought the gun in the first place that's one of the reasons they may have bought the gun, actually, is because it was different. And because they liked a few features it had that their average, American design gun didn't have. So I can't just sit there and say, oh no, that's silly. Don't buy the quad rail. That's buy the M-LOK only. Because that wouldn't be cool.
Yeah. So now you brought up the point of the gun being a vibe. And I mean, I get that through my Instagram, through my YouTube. A lot of people just like the gun, how it looks, and they want to buy the gun too. So they go on your website, they look at the different models you've listed, and every once in a while they come back to me and ask like, hey, I've seen a gun that I kind of like, but I would like certain parts on it swapped and customized, and maybe instead of the or the bipod cut handguard, I want to have like an M-LOK handguard instead of the para stock. I want to have your battle rifle stock on it. So how would these people go about to customize their FALs from you all to get the vibe that they want? Because they said before, it is a culture, it is a niche culture, but people just love the gun for that part, for the history, and want to make it their own. So how can they go about making the gun their own, customize it the way they want it?
A lot of people do. And when I first came to work here, I worked as a customer service manager, and the we get like I swear, a quarter of the guns that left here were custom guns, and we still have a lot of custom guns. I think people just aren't aware they can actually just call up or email and do it. You still can do it, and honestly, we're never going to let that go away because of the same reasons I talked about with the gun being different, and you can't kill that part of the gun off. If we could make every variation of FAL, classic FAL, we would do it because we know people, they want a rare, variant that came out of some South African armory or was, bought by the Kuwaitis or something like that. There were so many countries, over 90 countries, that utilize this gun. And a lot of people, they want to have, maybe they have personal reasons why they want that particular style. We would do it, but some of them are just not feasible. But what is feasible for some people is that they just have a gun built the way they want it, and have it customized the way they want it, and they come up with it. And we can't let that die off. I just don't think people are aware they can do it. If you look at our 20, 30 guns or 50 guns are on the website or whatever it is, and you start picking this and that and the other, it's probably possible we can build it that way. Now, if you look on Google Images of some of the early FALs that were made in the 50s, we may not be able to do it that way, except for this T48 project we're working on. Because some of those parts, we can't shut down production to make the exact gas block from 1953. So there are some things we can't pass, but if it's on our website and it's guns that are on our website and you like this on this gun and that on another gun, I would be shocked if we can't do a custom build for you.
Hell yeah. So to all my followers, like, that is a pretty big thing. So you can custom order your FALs. There's a lot of people just ask me that, they'll be like, hey, I want a custom setup on my FL. And be like, well, now they know. Reach out to Dsarms and get it built.
It's so cool that people can do that because when you hold this rifle, I mean, I know I don't want to sound wax on philosophically here, but when you hold the FAL, it's like you're holding an adventure. It's as silly as it sounds. It's like you hold that gun and you start thinking about some bygone era where this gun did that and it was here, been there, done that type of stuff. And what's neat when you do a custom gun is like, not only are you getting that vibe, it's like you did it the way you wanted to have it done, And so there's still manufacturers in the United States that'll do that with guns, but it's actually not as many as it was, say, 20 years ago or before, when all these manufacturers, Weatherby had a custom shop, Colt had a custom shop, all these guys had that. Now it's like these large manufacturers will go and have 1,000 guns or 2,000 guns made for Talo as an exclusive, or for Davison's or one of the distributors, and that's fine. But it's not as special as when you ordered your particular gun directly with the factory, with this change and that change. It is your gun. And I think when you mix that your gun idea with the lore of this rifle or the vibe of this rifle, boy, it does create a special experience for the customer. And I see that because when I go to trade shows, people talk about that all the time. The gun that they ordered, the gun that was built for them, and it really is built for them. And some of these configurations, not my cup of tea at all, but like it's definitely a custom gun. Because I'll be like, well, why? I can't imagine somebody want that barrel length with this stock. That doesn't matter what I carry. That's what he wanted, And a lot of other manufacturers, they will get a little, maybe because they can make so many guns where they can just say, no, we don't make it that way. Maybe they do that. But we're not that kind of company yet. I don't know if we'll ever get to be that kind of a company because the rifle is so hard to make that we'll probably always be very attentive to the customer on stuff like that, and not be, no, you can only get it this way, because the process of making these guns, at most, maybe we make 30 guns with the same SKU at one time. A lot of them are made 2 or 3 at a time. So if you're making a gun 2 or 3 at a time, or even 30 at a time, it's very easy to make a couple custom guns in there because the batch size isn't hundreds. If you were making hundreds or thousands, or in the case of some of the larger AR manufacturers, they're probably making 10,000 at a time. If they're making 10,000 at a time, they cannot afford to have 4 or 5 or 20 custom guns in there. That would mess up the production. Where we can still focus on that.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. And one thing you mentioned, and that's also a lot of people asking about it, it's obviously not only just the new products that are going to release for this year, but especially the T48. And I
Yeah,
think
and
that's the elephant in the room too after the magazines. So let's get to that.
okay, well, I don't have one on me. What we can do is a possible future Q&A on it, and we can go step by step through the gun, which would be great. Or a live stream or something like, well, I guess the live stream we can't show the gun as well, but we could put pictures up and talk about it. So that T48 was a project that H&R reached out to us. I've known the owner of Palmetto for many, many years, all the way back to when he first started his company, before he had any of the stuff we all think of PSA about. And they had bought the H&R name, and H&R had was one of the companies, along with High Standard and FN, that produced samples to try to win the next rifle to replace the M1 Garand. And it was designated later on during the trials as the T48. So we painstakingly replicated that rifle. Now, there will be some super FAL fans will say, there's this one thing on here that's not right. And it comes down to the stock. They want a Type A lower and a Type A stock. The Type A lower is where the wood goes over the back of the lower receiver, instead of having what we now call like a stock ferrule, which is a metal cap. That resulted in almost 100% crack stocks, no matter what wood you tried. And mind you, they were using wood in the 50s that was old trees, very hard wood, and they were still cracking these things. With today's wood, when we have wood made for any company, any gun company, unless you're maybe Holland out of England or something, where they're literally, oh, we know where we've had this tree, it's been sitting there, we know it's 200 years old, that's going to go on our next batch of guns. Well, they can afford to buy a tree like that because their guns are $100,000 a piece or more. So, most wood we know of that are on manufacturers guns now is relatively new wood. And if you were to make that stock out of that wood, if the originals, which were made out of old hardwood, broke, you can guarantee all the new ones would break. So that's the one. Besides that, we have replicated everything from the charging handle, which was a unique type of forward assisting charging handle, separate than the Israeli folding forward assist charging handle. The stripper clip top cover with the guides for the stripper clip. Even the texture on, like, say, the rear sight button, or the obviously the trigger guard, which is very easy to see. That's a folding trigger guard. That was a tactic during the 50s to make sure that you could use your big Mickey Mouse mittens when you're in the area. So they wanted to be able to fold. And in the M16 and the M16A2 and the M4, they've retained that idea where you can fold the trigger guard. The Swiss had a solution for utilizing the trigger when in Arctic, with Arctic mittens on. Miniguns did. Ironically, the gun that America adopted, the M14, did not have that. It was actually a part you had to bolt onto your trigger. So as crazy as that sounds, the gun that won was the one that didn't even have the feature that the M16 has, or the T48, which is where you can fold your trigger guard out of the way. But we replicated that with wire EDM and methods that you should not do it under if you wanted to make hundreds of thousands of guns. But we're not making 100,000 T48. It's going to be a limited edition gun. So we're going above and beyond. We could have skipped some of these features, and the average person wouldn't have known. They would have said, hey, that looks like a T48. And we could have said, hey, this is our T48 facsimile of the original rifle. No, we went beyond that. We started making a lot of the parts that were extremely labor intensive to make, to get it as close as possible without cracking stocks, which is why it's not a Type A lower. We just can't get past the idea of putting a Type A lower on wood on there, knowing that just people are going to have a very fragile product. That's why FN stopped making those lowers in that wood, because it was that bad. It was a bad design, and they got away from it. But all the other features, when it comes to the pistol grip, the charging handle, the receiver itself, the gas block, the wood handguard, the small ancillary levers and sling swivels, we've replicated all that. The flash higher design, down the markings of the. We actually bought a new marking tool, stamping tool, to stamp it exactly in the same font and size as H&R did. And these will be made by us under variants and sold through H&R.
That is awesome. Well, what is the release date on it?
The first round of guns will be late spring to early summer. And awesome. I don't know exactly what they're going to sell these for. There's been speculation, but that's all it is speculation at this point. I know it's not going to be $1,000 gun, that's for sure. But it's, if you look at other guns in this type of class of guns where they're very historically accurate semi-automatic rifles, it'll be priced in that same amount of that. Not AR-15 classic retro guns; those can be made and sold at a lower cost for a historically accurate rifle because they utilize a lot of the same parts that are on modern guns. Where this gun does utilize FAL parts, of course, but FALs in general aren't $500 guns. So it's I think it'll be affordable for the FAL fans. But it's not going to be $1,000.
Awesome. So yeah, we'll definitely do another Q&A session on the T48 itself, just all the history that went into it, how y'all developed it, why you chose the project. And we're probably going to do that closer to the launch date of the rifle. But now, speaking about the other products that you're going to have for this year, like what do you have planned? Do you want to fill us in on what's going to be released when and what are new things for the FAL? Because I'm a firm believer that the FAL can be upgraded to a really reliable battle rifle in the 21st century, and the design is not completely outdated. Even though some people believe it's a completely outdated rifle, I don't think so. So, Marc, what do you all got for this year?
Well, yeah, there are people that think it's obsolete, which is not true. There's some people that think it's obsolescent, so it's still usable but not obsolete. I don't think it's obsolescent either. I think an M1 Garand is obsolescent, where it's not obsolete like a bolt-action World War I rifle would be, but it's seriously limited. The FAL doesn't have that problem because you can put an optic mount on it much easier than many of the early semi-automatic rifles. Also, it is a detachable magazine, not a clip M-block magazine or clip magazine, or say like a SVD-40, where yes, it had a detachable magazine, but it was never issued with extra magazines. It had that magazine to be able to take it apart for maintenance and stuff like that, but the Soviets didn't issue a ton of magazines with the gun. So this is a good example here of something we do for FALs. We have a new pistol grip that's coming out this year. We have an ambi selector that is pretty uniquely designed because the FAL was meant to be taken apart and worked on by a cartridge, either the bullet tip or the rim of the cartridge. This selector can be removed with just a bullet tip, even though it's ambi. And why is that important? Because unlike an AR-15 where you can take your trigger components out without removing your grip and your selector, the FAL, if you need to take any of your trigger components out, you have to remove the selector. So I did not want to have some hokey, junky cap screw with a tiny little hex key that you'd have to keep in your grip or something, and then you know what would happen with it. You'd tighten it and it would strip out, and then you'd never get your selector out. So we designed an actual field soldier-proof selector. We've had our ambi magazine release for a while, but now we have an ambi bolt catch. So this bolt catch will go into any metric FAL. And that's the thing too, is it's important. Most of our parts are meant for metric guns. There are some parts that will fit inch guns, but a lot of them will only go in metric because those two patterns are that much different. We have QD pockets for slings because not everybody wants to run the traditional sling loop. I like the traditional sling loop because it is 360, but some people, I can see some people getting tangled up with that too. So, but it's an option. A direct mount flashlight, because a lot of people that buy FALs They do not want to break up the lines that are classic. They want to run the plastic handguard. They don't want to go too crazy, but they want it to be enough to get more usage out of the gun. And so we did design accessories that go directly on the plastic handguard, not because we don't want to sell an M-LOK, we do, or maybe a Quadrail later on. And it's not like we think that this is necessarily the best way to mount things all the time, but we know that people, they want the option for the regular handguard. So those will be in production this year as well. Thinking further here, some of this stuff is already in production. This is a 5/8 adapter for the FAL, so you can use modern flash hiders and muzzle comps. This has the new Dead Air X, Sandman X suppressor gas plug that's been in production for a while too. So some of these things are actually already in production. This QD bipod, that's been in production for a while. But this is a great example of stuff you can do to your FAL. These are the Polar magazines that we talked about earlier. We have our optic mount. This one has the ACOG cut, so anything that is ACOG compatible. So like a primary arms prisms, a DSA prism. So there's several prisms that take that. The new EOTech 3-9 Voodoo is ACOG cut, so that could go in here too. So there's a lot of things you can do to the FAL and still keep classic lines, or you can, put the M-LOK on there, BRS stock. Up on the wall here, we have a 1913 Picatinny rail with a Samson stock. So, I believe there is support for this gun. A lot of people say, well, there's no support for AKs, which is ridiculous. We know there's AK support, but people still do say that stuff. There's no support for that gun. I just don't see that as an FAL issue. We have a lot of support for this. We sell every single part of the gun. I'm a gun nerd like most people, but I've also shot enough guns over the years to see that springs wear, parts break. On the best guns, they do. And a lot of these modern guns that we buy, the companies won't even sell some of the parts. They have to go back to the factory. They won't sell it, or maybe they will list a firing pin or a recoil spring, but it's never in stock. Or you have to go to some weird website to buy it. Not the case with us. We sell every single part. Every single part. Like a tiny detent, the pin to hold the gas block on, which we would never really ever need. We sell it all. So not only do we support the gun with every single part being sold, an average gun is 120 plus parts on an FAL, but we just went over scope mounts, different handguards, different levers, different sling attachments, different adapters, a suppressor plug. We have a suppressor gas shield that seals up the back of the scope mount, so gas can't just shoot back in your face, kind of like a gas buster, but it's like a metal shield that clips into your gun. There's a lot of accessories that we sell, and if somebody's just bored with their FAL or they have too many fixed stock guns, they can convert it to a para. We sell para conversion kits because maybe you already have several of the same gun, So I think we support it pretty well, but there's always room for new accessories.
Absolutely. And I mean, I agree to the point of having the ability to customize it and order spare parts keeps the platform alive. I mean, this gun that I have here, started out as a very basic FAL, like para FAL Conga version, and nothing resembles that no more. Like, I swapped every part thanks to the availability from y'all to sell these parts. And I think that's what keeps the platform alive.
Yeah, absolutely. And and honestly, some of these parts were made from what the reason we were made, like some of them were, it wasn't on our radar. Customers were asking for it. And instead of just saying, no, you can't get that for an FAL, we ended up developing a lot of them because of customer demand. Not even demand, just nice customers that buy guns from us saying, do you guys make a different sling option here? Because I don't like that sling option. And so we did get around to it. So we do listen to the customers and make some of these accessories that a lot of other companies would say, no, you buy it the way you buy it. Or they only offer it M-LOK, or they only offer QD pockets, or they only offer. Probably shouldn't make some of the accessories we make because it could maybe at times slow us down. But we manage it okay.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, yeah, that's all I got for my followers or the question they gave me. So, like, do you have anything you want to add? Anything you want to talk about in this video?
The only thing I would want to add is I think a healthy conversation on the gun is really important, not just because it might sell a couple guns for us, but like there isn't enough, it's my opinion, there's not enough real conversation of why this over that. Not just showing a picture or doing some sales spiel or something like that from somebody at a company or a content creator just making really cool pictures. There's real things to talk about with the gun, what it's great at, what it's okay at, and what you shouldn't buy this gun for. You know, it's not a sniper rifle or a precision rifle. It is a battle rifle. It is a battle rifle that does some things that some modern battle rifles can't do very well. It has a very low bore access. It has the short stroke gas system does allow for faster shots, split times in between your shots. There are many things that it does extremely well. And I don't think it's talked about enough. So I look forward to more of these Q&As talking about the good and the bad in the middle ground of the FAL rifle. Also comparing it to its big competitors, which is the M14 and the G3. They are in the same boat. They have a few, I would say sometimes this gun has more advantages, but they have advantages and disadvantages too. And I think that's the best conversation. And that's also why the T48 project and that story of the M14 versus the FAL never dies. That story has never died. It's always been a conversation. And why is it? Because it's a fun conversation. Why'd they do this? What are the advantages? Was there real reasons why they didn't adopt the FAL? Was there real reasons why they did adopt the M14? Were all of them legit? Does it matter now? Did it matter back then? You know, those are great conversations. And that's something that's cool about this gun is it has like a soul. I mean, for an inanimate object, it has a type of inanimate object soul to it, a vibe like we talked about. And that vibe supports these conversations. And some of these other guns, I'm not just saying these other companies are like their products not good or anything. I'm just saying some products, a lot of products on the market, they lack that, and there's no conversation to be had with it. And that's why I look forward to more Q&As, live stream, podcast, any of those forms, because this gun has so many cool aspects that could be discussed. Even the ones that are to its disadvantage are still awesome conversations. You know, if we don't talk about it, you're missing a lot of the awesomeness of the gun. Is just no differences between this gun, the different models, and its comparison to other guns. It's fun conversation that you can have, and then you can take your rifle out and you can test the stuff. A great example before we get off here is the bore access. The gun was designed so that when you're in a prone position or in a kneeling position or behind some type of cover, that your head is not making a massive target to the enemy. If you look at like an AR-15 or miniguns that were straight line design, when you put your cheek on that rifle, your head is naturally going to be higher because of how that bore access is. That was put into this gun, and they liked that idea so much that when the Germans were going to adopt this gun, they made it even lower. To that extra couple millimeters and said, well, it's even lower is better. It's the silhouette of the soldier is even lower. And we've seen those kind of targets from the Cold War where it had like the hot steel helmet and you know, they'd be behind some type of a tank barrier or something like that. And then that was the paper target. It was a silhouette of somebody. The idea behind this gun was it had a lower silhouette. One of the ideas. And I'm just using that as one of the many examples of something you can actually go to the range and experience with this gun. Is when you're in that prone position, you'll find yourself, well, I am sitting much lower. My neck doesn't hurt as much when I'm in the prone position with this gun. So, you know, there's a lot of that stuff that I look forward to discuss.
Awesome. So yeah, I mean, Mark, thank you very much for your time. I just want to reiterate, as you said before, the FAL is a vibe, and I think it's one of the coolest gun out there on the market that just carries a lot of history with it too. And I'm really thankful that you guys are putting in the work to keeping the history alive and offering us something different that no one else makes here, at least in the US or even worldwide, to my knowledge. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for explaining the new products you're going to be releasing this year. I think it was super helpful for all my followers to see what's going on in Dsarms, and I'm very stoked for all the new products that are going to come out, and obviously for the magazines.
I appreciate you having me on. Everybody, submit more questions, and next time we'll do lightning rounds on the questions that go even faster. And I want questions and concerns. I want to address all that stuff. So I really appreciate being on here. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank you, Mark. You have a good one.